The Xiaomi 13 versus the Samsung Galaxy S23. Now, which phone is better and which one should you get? Hopefully, I'll answer that in this video. And by the way, if you guys are looking for like a spec reading video, you've come to the wrong place. If you guys want to know the specs, you guys already know where to look for it anywhere online. This video is going to be more about how do these two phones act in day-to-day life, because spec reading is one thing, but actually using the phone is a whole different thing. Now, I've been using the Xiaomi 13 for about a week now, and I've been using the S23 for about 2 weeks now. Both of these phones are fantastic in their own ways, and in a lot of instances, the Xiaomi actually beats out the S23 by, well, we'll get into it in this video. So let's go ahead and start out by talking about the build quality of both of these phones, and well, they are fantastic. They both feel super premium when you hold them, and both have a flat display and of course a glass backplate. The S23 is using Gorilla Glass Victus 2, the new one, and the Xiaomi is using the Gorilla Glass 5. So that means the S23 will be a little bit more, it'll give you a little bit more protection against drops, but when it comes to scratches, I would be careful and put on a screen protector, because it doesn't really matter what Gorilla Glass version you have, at least out of the new ones, they all scratch very, very easily. Now, both phones do have an aluminum border that goes around the entire phone, but the Xiaomi, in my opinion, is just ever so slightly more comfortable to hold, because the actual backplate curves just ever so slightly to meet that aluminum border. So when you're holding it in your hand, it doesn't seem like it's a big difference when compared to a completely flat glass on the S23, but that difference is just enough to where you can actually really feel it as you're holding it, and it is a super, super comfortable device. Now, that's not to say the S23 is not comfortable. I'm just saying, thanks to that curve, it's a little bit more comfortable. So when it comes to the performance of both of these phones, they are basically identical. You do have Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 on both the phones. You do have UFS 4.0 on both the phones. But a small exception is that with the S23 series, there is a custom 8 Gen 2 processor in there. So it's an 8 Gen 2 made for Galaxy. Now, what that means in real world cases, I'm not really too sure. I've been using the Xiaomi just fine. In fact, my main SIM card is in the Xiaomi. I live in the States, by the way. It works with T-Mobile. So if you got T-Mobile, you might want to get the Xiaomi, man. I'm just kidding. Not yet. Watch the rest of this video, okay? So when it comes to performance, I was expecting a bigger difference between the made for Galaxy 8 Gen 2 and the standard 8 Gen 2. But honestly, I didn't really notice that big of a difference. They both feel crazy fast. You can't go wrong with either or. It's not like if you get the S23, you're going to experience slowdowns. It's not like you're going to get the Xiaomi and experience slowdowns. They're both great. Now, both of the phones do start out at 128 gigabytes, but with that, you are getting the slower UFS 3.1 storage. If you want the 4.0, you're going to have to bump up to 256 gigs at the minimum. And of course, depending on the region you're living in, the S23 actually goes up to 512 gigabytes of RAM. No, not RAM. Whoa. I'm getting a little too ahead of myself. 512 gigs of storage. Could you imagine? 512 gigs of RAM? We'll get there one day. You'll see. 512 gigs of storage maxed out with 8 gigabytes of RAM. Now, the Xiaomi does take the lead. It also goes up to 512, but you get 12 gigabytes of RAM. So 512 storage, 12 gigs of RAM, Xiaomi takes a slight win. And by the way, guys, the only reason I'm doing this video is because my previous Xiaomi video did so well, comparative to other Xiaomi videos that I did. I live in the States, so Xiaomi is not really popular here. So if you guys want to see more Xiaomi videos and more Redmi, Huawei, and all those overseas phones, drop a like on this video, because that'll let me know that you guys are in fact interested. The displays on the two phones are both absolutely stunning, and you really have to cherry pick to find out which is the best one. Now, the Xiaomi does offer more HDR options, such as Dolby Vision, which the S23 does not have. So if you're streaming from an app that uses Dolby Vision, the Xiaomi can actually take advantage of it, and the S23 unfortunately cannot. When it comes to peak brightness, for example, outdoors in direct sunlight, the Xiaomi does go up to a whopping 1,900 nits of brightness. That is 100 nits shy from the iPhone 14 Pros, which are at 2000 nits. Now the S23 is at 1750 nits, so it's a little lower. You know, in the real world, you have to have both phones side by side to really notice the difference. If you buy the S23, it's not like you're gonna go outside and you're gonna be like, oh, I can't see anything. No, they're both fantastic. They're both super bright, but the Xiaomi is a little bit brighter. But honestly, they're both fantastic. I can't really decide and say, yes, the Xiaomi is 100% better. Now, the S23 does take a slight lead on the actual tech of the screen. So it has LTPO display, so it can variably change the refresh rate depending on what you're doing. The Xiaomi does not have that. You would have to, I believe, bump up to the 13 Pro to get that variable LTPO display. So on this one, you do have 120 Hertz, but again, it's not that LTPO technology. So what about the cameras? Now, I feel like I'm going to spend a little too much time talking about the cameras. So if you guys want to skip forward, I'll have timestamps down below. You can scrub through the video and see which one interests you the most. But when it comes to the cameras, it really all depends on what you prefer. I mean, I know it's kind of a cop-out because that's kind of what it is for anything, but this is more true now than ever before because I absolutely love taking photos with the Xiaomi 13, man. That Leica profile, the color profile, and there's actual Leica lenses in the camera housing. So it's not like an outsourced camera with Leica colors. No. It's Leica colors and Leica hardware. And the photos that come out of this phone are, just personally, they are wicked good, man. They are so perfect. I'm going to go ahead and throw up some examples of both the phones. Now, to make things fair, I'm going to put the S23 on Leica Vibrant instead of Leica Authentic. So whenever you do put it on Leica Vibrant, it kind of matches the mainstream flagship phones, right? So they both look just fantastic. Both phones do have a 50 megapixel main camera, with the S23 having dual pixel autofocus and the Xiaomi having phase detection autofocus. Now, the dual pixel autofocus is slightly better than phase detection. It's quicker, more reliable, and, well, yeah, it's just quicker and more reliable. Now, the ultra-wide camera on both the phones are basically identical when it comes to the 120-degree field of view. And of course, both do have 12 megapixels to play around with. But the S23 does have slightly larger pixels, which means it'll collect more light once the sun goes down. I think both phones do a fairly good job, so let me know which one you think is better. The telephoto on both the phones is a 10 megapixel, with the Xiaomi having a 3.2 optical zoom and the S23 having a 3 times optical zoom. So the Xiaomi does punch in just a little bit further, and on paper, the Xiaomi should be brighter with it having an f2.0 aperture and the S23 having an f2.4 aperture using the telephoto lenses. Now, both the phones do have OIS on the telephoto as well, so it'll help you stabilize those zoom shots. The selfie camera on the Xiaomi is 32 megapixels and the S23 is at 12 megapixels. But, you know, how well do they stack up in the real world? Well, you guys are looking at it right now, so let me know. One thing to point out is that the Xiaomi does offer a wider angle, coming in at 22 millimeters, and the S23 is at 26 millimeters. So what that means is that with the Xiaomi, you'll be able to fit more in the shot without having to kind of, you know, spaghetti your hand all the way far away from you. You can kind of keep it a little bit closer while having more room to play with in the background. I think the Xiaomi is more of a fun camera, if that makes sense. It has a ton of modes built into it and a super nice color profile that you just cannot mimic exactly on the S23. But that is all personal preference, so you guys may think otherwise. In my personal opinion, I do prefer the stills coming from the Xiaomi, but again, both phones are fantastic. You just can't go wrong with either or. It's just all a matter of preference. Video recording is better on the S23, with it going up to 8K 30, whereas the Xiaomi goes up to 8K 24. But overall, the HDR and processing looks better on the S23, and the front camera is miles better on the S23, with it having a 4K 60 option, and the Xiaomi only goes up to 1080p 30. Yeah, 1080p 30. Xiaomi. Xiaomi. You guys have the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 with a 32 megapixel front camera. Come on now. 1080p 30 should be like the lowest it can do. It should be able to do 4K 60. So that's what I'm hoping for it for the Xiaomi 14 or something to do. Xiaomi really needs to step up their front-facing game. They're showing the back cameras love, but not the selfie camera. Come on, Xiaomi. So what about the battery life and charging? Well, I'm glad you asked, because the Xiaomi takes the win in literally every aspect when it comes to battery life and charging. So the battery life on the Xiaomi, believe it or not, is basically the same as my S23 Ultra. No joke. This thing is a monster, but that's to be expected. It has a 4,500 milliamp hour battery, and the S23 has a 3,900 milliamp hour battery. So this thing gets around 8 hours of screen on time, roughly, and the S23 gets around 7 to 7.5. Again, this all depends on how you use the phone. So if you use a lot of camera, expect the battery to go down quite a bit faster. So the S23 charges at a maximum of 25 watts, which I would want it to be a little bit better. The Xiaomi charges at a whopping 67 watts, okay? That's nuts. The S23 does 15 watts of wireless charging. The Xiaomi does 50 watts, 50 watts of wireless charging. The S23 does 4.5 watts of reverse wireless charging. The Xiaomi does 10 watts of reverse wireless charging. So when it comes to the battery and charging package, the Xiaomi takes the total win. Just to put it into perspective, the S23 takes about an hour to charge. The Xiaomi takes about 35 minutes to charge. But the more impressive thing is the 0 to 50, right? From 0 to 50% of battery, 15 minutes. That is nuts. But of course, in real day-to-day usage, they're both good. They both last longer than most people need, and most of you guys charge overnight anyway, so charging is not really that big of a deal. But if you do need that super top up fast charging before you head out, Xiaomi takes the win. Now the fingerprint sensors are slightly different. The Samsung uses an ultrasonic, which uses sound waves to measure the ridges of your fingerprint. Meanwhile, the Xiaomi uses an optical, which shines a light, and a small camera underneath reads your finger. Now, one could argue that the ultrasonic is more accurate, more secure, but the Xiaomi does work with my banking application, so I do have the option for to use my biometrics, and that leads me to believe that it is secure because, well, let's be honest, the chances of someone else using your fingerprint to unlock an optical fingerprint scanner is really, really unlikely. You would have to be like just very unlucky for that to happen. So when it comes to security, they're both fine, but the Xiaomi is just so much faster. I mean, watch. Boom. See that? Boom. Even with the screen off. I'm looking at the camera, so I may not be hitting the fingerprint sensor directly, but I mean, it's just, hang on, watch. Boom. Boom. It's so much faster. Now, the S23, right? So it says it doesn't match. I don't know why. Is my finger dirty? Let's try that again. Come on now. It was working. What? Come on. Let me wipe down the screen real quick. All right, let's try it again. So, boom. Nope. Boom. Come on now. 1 second. I'm going to try re-enrolling my fingerprint. I don't know why that's happening, but it just wouldn't unlock. That's so strange. I've never had that happen before. Okay, so I re-enrolled my finger, so let's go ahead and try that one more time. So now, as you see, it's working better. So, but it's just not as fast, and with the Xiaomi, you have a little bit more room to play with, so you don't have to hit directly on the sensor. You can hit a little bit left, right, up, down. It'll still unlock fine. But, I mean, honestly, both of these phones do a great job, so you can't really go wrong with either or. There is an update coming to the Xiaomi which will enable Wi-Fi 7. So I believe the Wi-Fi 7 radios or whatever are already in the phone. We're just waiting for an update. Meanwhile, with the S23, you do have Wi-Fi 6E. So the Xiaomi is a little bit more future-proofed, oddly enough. But for a lot of people, who cares, right? The S23 does USB 3.2 speeds, the Xiaomi does a really old USB 2.0 speeds. So if transferring files between your phone and computer is important, through the USB port, this is going to be really slow. This is going to be really fast. So do keep that in mind. So a big factor when people say or talk about Xiaomi is the support, right? The OS updates. Well, since this is a flagship Xiaomi, they are promising 3 years of operating system updates and 5 years of security updates. The S23 does 4 years, so a year extra of operating system updates, but the same 5 years of security updates. So Xiaomi's not there yet. They're getting there. I believe soon enough we'll see that 4 to 5 year of OS support, hopefully. But right now, the S23 will definitely last you longer when it comes to actually getting the updates. Now, the price points of these two phones, they are similar, I think. I don't know. Every region has their own different pricing, and the Xiaomi is not available in the US, so I can't really give you guys a true dollar amount. I know this is 1,000 euros, so the S23 in the States is around $800, but then but in Europe it's more expensive, so it just all depends where you live. I cannot give you guys like a honest, like, boom, this is the price. I can't do that. So, but you guys probably already know how much it costs in your area. If you don't, Google is free, right? So you can try Googling it, but I believe the Xiaomi, I'm holding up the S23, I believe the Xiaomi is a little bit more expensive, so do keep that in mind. So to sum up this video, I think both of these phones are fantastic. You cannot go wrong with either or. It's just a matter of preference. Do you want the Leica colors? Do you want the Leica hardware? Do you want the Samsung updates? Do you want the Samsung just better camera package overall? Or do you want the Leica package, right? Do you want 3 years of OS updates? Do you want 4 years of OS updates? Do you want really fast battery charging, or do you want slow battery charging? Both of these phones have pros and cons to each other, so I can't really say which one is best, right? I do like the Xiaomi, but I also like the S23. So this keeps the review very unbiased. I don't really care which one you guys pick. They're both amazing. So which phone do you guys prefer? Let me know down in the comments. And again, if you guys want me making more videos on Xiaomi, Redmi, Huawei, any other brand that's out there, do leave a like on this video, because that'll let me know that you guys are in fact interested in seeing that. Because if no one's interested, then, well, I'm not really gonna make a video on it, because it'll get no views. And what's the point of making a video if it gets no views, right? Right. That's it. This was Mark from Mark's Tech. Adios.